and it is on to November, which means we're going to talk about noir, one of my favorite little subgenres of film. It is a little bit difficult to nail down with the definition. I'll try to summarize it in a few bullet points. Noir is a type of crime film, usually stylized. The age of noir, we'll say, was basically 40s to 50s. There have been noir films made afterwards in that style, but films that are made after that time period are referred to as neo-noir. Slightly different, but same in spirit. These films usually include some kind of cynical outlook, darker themes, downbeat story, moral ambiguity. They do not have to be. Again, like these are all things that commonly characterize these movies. Does not have every single one of these characteristics. Stylistically, they're fairly high contrast and full of shadows. You can see influence from movements like German Expressionism and poetic realism. They will often include a femme fatale or some kind of central love interest in the film. Some type of story device like nonlinear stuff or flashbacks, narration, things like that are used to distinguish the story structure a little bit from a traditional film. The dividing line between noir and neo-noir can be a little bit messy. If you try to nail a genre label down to its core, you're going to find some uncertainties because, the labels are just the best thing we can do. But generally, noir is considered to end of the 50s, maybe early 60s, wherever the line is. It's somewhere around there. If there's a noirish movie in the 70s or later, call it neo-noir. Before that, sure, why not? It's noir. It is most commonly described as an American phenomenon. That is kind of where the term gained popularity. Films like The Maltese Falcon, certainly the most visible early noir, though not quite the first, I suppose, depending on how you define it. But there have been a lot of great entries from across the pond. England has several notable ones, France as well. Other countries have their own spins on it. Italy has a Session as an early one from the early 40s as well. So don't limit it just to America. It's worldwide. Lots of countries have entries. Since the initial era of noir was so long ago, and not everyone might be used to older films, I will provide a personal recommendation and some general ones as well. Some generally well received noirs and neo-noirs from every decade, from 2020s back to 1930s. So hopefully you'll get a widespread, maybe be able to dip your toes into some older films if you have not done so before. For the 2020s, a conventional film might be something like Decision to Leave. Very much has the typical tropes of the genre. I want to pick one that is perhaps a little more off the beaten path. That's The Empty Man. Yes, you might be thinking, if you are familiar with the movie, this is a horror film. I mean, I love the combination personally. I wish there were more. And The Empty Man also has a number of core characteristics, like a lot of scenes at night, rain, the kind of complex, convoluted story, smoking, some time jumps, things like that. A lot of characteristics. And of course, it's a crime story at its core, depending on how you look at it. I will look at it as a crime story, so I think it's perfectly apt. Maybe an unconventional pick, but for the 2010s, a lot of great picks. David Fincher put out some great neo-noir in the 2010s and earlier, of course, as well. Films like Drive, Blade Runner 2049, Prisoners, Gone Girl. I'll go international for this one and highlight The Yellow Sea. It is very much a downbeat film. You'll get the cynicism, there may not be the black and white shadowy photography, but the film feels very secretive, cloaked in shadow, set against the protagonist. Hits on a common idea in some noir of, following a person who may be a criminal, may not be, may just be an innocent person, and following them on the run. Reflecting, in my mind, films like Odd Man Out or The Big Clock. Na Hong Jin is one of my favorite directors, so obviously I have to recommend his films where I can, so check this one out. For the 2000s, again, lots of good stuff here for neo-noir. Films like Memories of Murder, Zodiac, Mulholland Drive are classics. But I will highlight Narc. This is a film, stylistically, is very different from perhaps classical noir, which is polished, kind of elegant. Narc is low to the ground. It is frantic, ferocious. It is concerned with crime on the ground level, practical impacts, the practical difficulties of administering justice. But it is cynical, despondent. It has strong lead performances, obviously crime. Central figure follows a detective, so I recommend this one a lot. This may not reflect the beginnings of noir the same way, but you can see the trappings there. 1990s. Again, I mean, like all these decades, there's a lot of great stuff in this vein. I mean, the subgenre is quite versatile. Some classics include The Usual Suspects, Miller's Crossing, and Strange Days. So I'm going to highlight Insomnia. To be clear, this is not Nolan's Insomnia. This is the original Norwegian film. Not that there's anything wrong with Nolan specifically, I just think this one's better. It's another film dealing with justice, how it needs to be carried out. Stellan Skarsgård gives a fantastic performance. This is another one where, the presentation is pretty different from classic noir, not just because, it's in color, but also because this is a film that is soaked entirely, I think, in daylight because it's set, in like this 24-hour daylight cycle. So you kind of get the opposite of the shadowiness in a sense, like the sense of the light kind of pervading everything and the truth being inescapable. So very different look, but I love it. The 1980s, you could highlight films like Blade Runner, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or Body Heat, but I will go with William Friedkin and To Live and Die in LA. This almost feels like the noir trappings like cranked up. Friedkin just goes so big with it. It's very intense, as much as Friedkin is known for that, orchestrating that car chase in The French Connection, right? There's another one in this film. The French Connection is also a great neo-noir, which I won't actually be highlighting. Also watch The French Connection. This clearly has the detective, the moral ambiguity, the cynical attitude. It really is like a color noir that's less shadowy. But this movie's a powder keg. It is a blast to watch. Awesome music. Again, awesome performances. I mean, it's a fantastic movie. And Friedkin's another one of my favorite directors, so of course I'm going to push him a little bit. The 1970s could reference films like The Parallax View, Chinatown, The Conversation. I will talk about Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. Sam Peckinpah is a very notable figure in American filmmaking. Of all the movies on this list, this may be the most dissimilar from classic noir in a sense, because much like Narc, this is in presentation very different. It is not, I don't know if it's rude to say this is not refined, but it is a very like dirty, scuzzy movie filled with, kind of like dirty, scuzzy people. It's certainly pervaded with the cynicism, the negative outlook on really humanity as a whole, but it's mesmerizing. It's still got the same ideas. And also like in noir, the wardrobe is a mainstay. You have like the fedoras, the suits, everything is very clean, sort of. Things seem very formal, but this is, certainly, this feels like a very 70s movie to me. Next, 1960s. Some classics include movies like Targets, Seance on a Wet Afternoon, and In the Heat of the Night, but I will be highlighting Blast of Silence. Blast of Silence truly feels like classic noir. It may have come 20 years after the Golden Age started, but it fits right in my mind. This may be the most like consistently like downbeat story in this whole video. Some other movies are certainly much more intense than this, but the way the narration is used to just kind of pummel you with the characters, self-imposed isolation, even in the face of chances for happiness. Like, I think it's just remarkable. It's got the attire, it's still of the era. You still got the suits, fedoras, all that good stuff. It's got the photography, the tone. Like, it's all there. And I love this movie. This is the first, like, of the movies I've talked about so far, this is the latest, like, classic feeling noir. Next, 1950s. Some recommendations are Ace in the Hole, Vertigo, and Touch of Evil. But I will be talking about Woman on the Run, which is kind of a snappier version of noir. It kind of feels like noir has a bit of a spectrum between super serious, deliberate, and also, like, a little bit more comedic. Maybe not necessarily lighthearted, but very energetic, especially in the script. And this is one of the more energetic ones, I would say. Protagonist, the wife, is very snappy, kind of cynical from her failing marriage. Film is fast-paced, not just in the dialogue delivery, but there are, a lot of beats, a lot of things that happen. This may have more energy than you might be expecting, perhaps, from older films, so that may be an easier sell if you're trying to get into things of the time period. And it's also got nice stylization and some shots I love. 1940s. Some classic noirs include The Third Man, Rebecca, and The Maltese Falcon. But I will talk about Panique, which is like a top 10 movie for me. Like, I love this thing to death. It's got like a fantastic lead performance, especially by Viviane Romance. Great style, some incisive commentary about humanity that still feels so relevant to this day. And also, for some reason, movies that have carnivals in them must be good. Was it The Third Man, I believe, also has a great carnival setting in it that is used beautifully. So, if a movie's got a carnival setting, you need to watch it. This has a carnival setting. Go check it out. And then for 1930s, there's a few proto-noirs that I think are worth shouting out. I love The Port of Shadows, personally. Marcel Carné is one of my favorite directors, so push that for sure. The Thin Man does not have the same cynicism as some of the movies that, would follow in the decades after, but it is very much like the crime, the, snappiness, the investigation, all that fun stuff. Also, two of my favorite characters in cinema with Nick and Noel Charles. M, classic by Fritz Lang, one of the most highly regarded movies of the 30s in general, as well as The Testament of Dr. Mabuse. These don't, strictly speaking, fit the definition or the classification as much as some of the later movies do, but you can see some of the things that noir rose from. in these films. So I think these are absolutely worth checking out, even if they're not as neatly in the definition, I suppose. But the definition is quite fluid, honestly. Like, I wouldn't be mad if someone said these were just straight up noir, because noir was something that was not like a concerted effort, right? It was just a classification that arose after the fact. Could be anything. Those are my recommendations. Hopefully you can find something in there that you haven't watched and find some ways to enjoy noir like I do.